our next guest, actually, consumer rights expert Martin James. A very good afternoon to you, Martin.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Now, obviously, invited you on to talk about these absolutely extraordinary millions and millions of motorists who are in line for a £700 payout. It was announced yesterday afternoon over this car finance scandal. It's amazing. 11 billion quid up for grabs. 14 million motorists in this country eligible for it. First of all, can you just quickly tell us how this came about? How have we got to a point where people are getting this payout?
Well, Julia, I've been practicing doing this because this is a long and convoluted story to get to. So I've done my level best to précis it all down for you. For many years now, in fact, if we go back to 2021, the regulator of the industry, the Financial Conduct Authority, banned a certain type of commission that was being paid from lenders to brokers. In this instance, the people who flogged you your car finance deals. Now, it's taken so far to get to a compensation scheme for people who may have been missold because there was a court case that was rumbling on that indeed you reported on recently that went to the Supreme Court. Now, while that case was largely turned down, one aspect was upheld. And that's why we find ourselves in the position where the regulator has announced that they are considering how to operate a compensation scheme. And as you say, we're talking 8.2 billion minimum, potentially up to 11 or more in compensation that will affect 14.2 million.
I mean, these are huge sums. I mean, the financial regulator, this is the Financial Conduct Authority. I mean, there could be an appeal against this, but strangely, this number is actually lower than many of these car finance companies were fearing. So they may well just go, let's just take this and get on with it. But I mean, so who's eligible for this? 14 million people we think eligible. How would you know if you were one of those 14 million?
Well, I would say to everybody watching, and I know it's a very articulate audience, Julie, but just to make the point, don't try and note all of this down. There's a lot of complexity here. The facts are, if you were sold a vehicle between the 6th of April 2007 and the 1st of November 2024, you may be one of that. The 44% of those people may be entitled to compensation, and that's because you were probably charged a certain type of commission on those agreements. Now, the reason why this has become such an issue is because it's not clear from the contracts if it was mentioned in the contracts before. Right. So don't waste your life trying to pore over old documents. Yeah. If you sold a vehicle between that period, you may be entitled to compensation. You will be contacted by the lender from January onwards. Once the agreement is in place.
They are required to contact you. What about if that lender has gone out of business? You bought a car, you can't even remember the license plate, a car, 5 cars back. How will they know how to contact you? How will they know where you are if you've moved house 10 times?
That's such a good question. Don't worry about the company that sold you the car. It is the lenders who will be contacting you, the providers of the credit agreement. Now, sadly, credit providers are not covered by the Financial Services Compensation Scheme, and that means if they go bust, so do your hopes of a payout. Oh. But most of the lenders are still in place.
Yeah, because funnily enough, they make money out of charging a fortune. But basically, if you bought a car and you used some sort of, payment to the account, you didn't just pay for it, one off. Odds are you may well be eligible for this. And I looked up a few years ago when this sort of came into the news, and I just looked up, there's some free credit check, or did you have any of these deals? No, I didn't. Okay, fine, not affected by it. But a lot of people will. And 700 quid is a heck of a lot of money.
Absolutely, and that's the average. It's worthwhile pointing in mind that because of the nature of these agreements, the amount of money that might have been lent, and indeed the Supreme Court case, which involved a man who was charged 55% commission.
What?
55%, that's why they upheld it. We're talking huge amounts of money.
This is theft. This is being a con artist at this point, isn't it? And again, a lot of people, this stuff is really complicated. It is really, these documents are really complicated. You're excited about getting the car. There's a lot of costs, and you often, these costs, they're not in the contract. They're not up front. You don't realise until you've made all these huge payments over the years where you are. Well, look, that's very much good news for drivers. The question is it enough of a penalty for these companies that they won't do it again? That's the question.
Well, commission is still paid on numerous financial agreements, and indeed many other organisations and sectors do it, like the energy sector, for example. Yeah. So sadly, I feel that we may be talking about this in the not too distant
Well,
future.
exactly. And a lot of people getting their cars on finance these days. Let me ask you about this announcement from Kemi Badenoch. Lots of different announcements in the Tory leader's keynote speech to conference. But she said that abolishing stamp duty, she said, is how we will achieve the dream of home ownership for millions. She said we can't unpick every tax. The debt, the deficit, the damage this Labour government is creating means we cannot do everything at once. But she says scrapping stamp duty will benefit people of all ages because, she says, because Conservatives must speak to all generations. The young professional buying their first flat, the couple looking for somewhere to bring up their first baby, the growing family hunting for their forever home, the pensioner who wants somewhere a little smaller or maybe to live near the grandchildren. No longer will they be punished with a tax that is a barrier to them doing the right thing for them, their family and for society. That's what Kemi Badenoch had to say. That's the politics of it. As a consumer rights expert, what do you make of that announcement?
Well, it's certainly a vote winner, and home ownership is back on the menu. For many years, it's been moved to one side as a political issue by all parties because it's very, very complicated to unravel. But the fact of the matter is, it matters greatly to lots of people. Now, stamp duty is certainly a vote winner, and it's a major issue. The reduction in the threshold of stamp duty to £300,000 resulted in a mad rush up to last April for people to desperately kind of try and buy and sell homes.
Yeah.
And many people who didn't make it through in that time period have been very disenchanted. But it's worthwhile noting that while stamp duty is a big nudge, if you like, to get people to vote for specific parties, the whole process of getting a mortgage is a challenging one. And this is in many ways aimed at younger people, because let's not forget the biggest single blocker to getting on the housing ladder is being able to save up a suitable deposit.
Yeah, especially when you're paying sky-high rents.
Absolutely. And this is where it comes down to, in some ways, kind of the battle of the classes, because the middle classes who are able to fund those deposits are helping their kids onto the housing market. But if you are working your way up, as indeed the Conservatives do like to encourage people from those backgrounds, it is much, much harder. And that's what's going to really...
Exactly. And when Bank of Mum and Dad help out, and if I'm in a position to do it, I will absolutely be doing that. You know, what parent who was able to wouldn't? You actually weirdly kind of pushing up prices for other people. It's unfair and it creates that unfairness. But again, people are going to help their own kids, aren't they? Rather than someone they've never met down the street. That's how it works. But this is the thing about stamp duty. It's very complicated because it only starts at a rate above £125,000, but at £300,000 for your first home. But it goes up in step changes, and you kind of pay that percentage on each individual bit. But at the top of the market, and lots of people say this will be a massive, big tax cut for very rich people buying multi-million pound homes. But there is an impact for everyone else of that, because of that, I suppose, trickle-down effect, isn't it? There's people buying homes, if they're very rich, they also employ a lot of people to decorate those homes and put new bathrooms in, and they buy new furniture, and people who work for those. There's a lot of talk about how stamp duty is a real sort of dampener on the whole economy.
Oh, absolutely, yes. And this is something that really puts people off. Actually, when I speak to people who aren't on the housing ladder, and there are millions and millions of people out there, a lot of them think that they will never, ever be able to get on the ladder because of stories they hear about things like stamp duty. And yes, absolutely, trickle-down economy, there's a lot of debate about how much impact it actually has, but certainly a lot of jobs are dependent on moving home, from removal companies right the way through to painters and decorators.
Yeah, and also people literally not starting a family.
Yeah, absolutely.
The main thing we could do for our economy is have lots of people in work, having babies, and creating the next generation of workers to fund everyone in their retirement. And we're not doing that because people are going, but I can't buy a home. I don't want to settle down until I can buy a home. And part of that is this massive lump sum for many people. Again, £300,000 sounds like an awful lot. If you're a 20-year-old right now, you ain't getting much for £300,000 in large parts of the country. It's certainly not a family home.
Well, exactly. And, I don't want to depress anyone, but, I'm just into 50 years old, and I'm just buying my first property now.
No. Oh, this is so wrong. I mean, again, this used to be the norm. People in their 20s could buy a home. If you had two people both working, you could buy a home. And now we're talking about people in their 40s doing it. Well, I wish you the very best. Martin James, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Coming back to you, Sam Armstrong, in the studio, you were just crunching some of the numbers on stamp duty in terms of how much it brings in. I was under the illusion, again, completely wrong, thank you for correcting me, that it didn't actually bring in that much money. Last year, £11.6 billion was brought in to Treasury coffers. But how much is it predicted to bring in by 2029, the time likely of the next election?
Between between 25 and 30 billion, 26 billion there or thereabouts. And
it's a huge sum of money.
£1 billion here, £1 billion there, all of a sudden you're starting to talk about real money.
So is Kemi Badenoch counting on the fact, real money, that's not money down the back of the sofa. Would she be counting on the idea that, well, you don't get that money directly into Treasury coffers, but all of the economic driving forces that puts into place...
Two things, big things. Firstly, she's outlined plans for 46 billion quid's worth of cuts, largely, if we're honest, from welfare.
Good. I mean, again, that's majority support in this country.
But secondly, on the issue of savings, the reason that stamp duty is a particularly bad tax is that it's a tax on a transaction, and when you tax transactions, you make people less likely to spend them because people just think, why bother? But unlike VAT, it's not like a little bit on everything. Yeah. It's that one big lump sum that's a bit of a kick in the teeth.
And at a time when you are already stretched. You've got estate agent fees, lawyers' fees, and the cost of your new big home and your mortgage.
Doesn't cover the stamp duty, by the way, right?
No.
The mortgage covers the value of the house. Yeah. This is out-of-pocket expenses at a time.
I've always thought if you have going to have stamp duty, it should be on the sale of your property, not the purchase of it, if you were going to have that tax at all.
Well, it would make an awful lot more sense to do it. As it is, the Conservative Party is saying they're going to abolish it. It's worth saying only for your first home. So if you own multiple homes, you'll still pay the tax.
Oh, is that the detail? I haven't got that. But again, this is going to make a massive difference.